Ladies and gentlemen, Magnus Carlsen has done it again. The strongest chess player in the world, winning yet another top-level tournament, the Champions Chess Tour. And as if this man didn't already have enough money, he just won another $200,000. That's right. And not only that, but this is his fifth consecutive time winning the Champions Chess Tour, 5 times in a row. I mean, when the other players are playing against Magnus in a tournament, they're really just competing for second place. Now, in this video, we are going to take a look at one of Magnus's games, the final round against 2-time world championship contender, Jan Nepomniachtchi. I'm going to say that the best I can. A lot of people just call him Nepo. So we're going to take a look at the final game of this tournament, where he absolutely crushes Nepo. We see why he's the strongest player in the world. So let's buckle in. Magnus playing with the white pieces. That's already dangerous. Starting with a point-4 advantage, Jan might as well just resign here. But Magnus leads with the move d4, and we actually transpose into a French defense here. I stumbled for a moment. I was trying to think of the word transpose. Now, normally you achieve this structure, the French defense, with the move order e4, e6, d4, d5, and then if we were to go into like knight c3, knight f6, e5, knight d7, knight e2, then we would have gotten the same variation that we get in the game, which is just the move order d4, e6, e4, d5, and we end up in a French with knight c3, knight f6, and e5. So this is the Steinitz variation of the classical French defense with this knight c3, knight f6, e5. Now, when you play against Magnus, he's not just going to play main lines. He's going to take you out of theory as fast as possible to get a game where he can just outplay you, because that's what he does. So e5, knight d7. Now, this is fine. This has been played almost like 20,000 times in the database I'm looking at, right? But this knight e2 move is already the second most common move. So normally here, people play the move f4. Taking all the space, solidifying the center. This is played the vast majority of the time, 13,000 times, whereas knight c to e2 has only been played 2,000 times, right? So he's already getting into a little bit of less known territory. We get c5, c3. This is all known. This is good. But then a3. Now we're down to below 100 games in the database. Normally here, again, f4 is the idea of bringing the knight back to play c3 to solidify the center this way, and also to push this f4 pawn and maybe even g3, and maybe even go into something like bishop e7, knight f3, g3, let's say black trades, and we could get a sample position of something that looks like this, where players are, fighting for the g file. This opens up, but the center is locked here, and it's going to be a complicated fight on this g file over here, and maybe someone creating some counterplay on the queen side. But instead of any of that, Magnus says, well, Nepo probably knows all that, so why not just play a3? And try to make him a little bit uncomfortable. Now, Jan responds principled. He plays a5, preventing any kind of like b4 nonsense. And Magnus just keeps developing with knight f3, and Jan really doesn't want this b pawn moving. And he also wants access to the b3 square, possibly with the knight or with the queen in the future. So that's why he solidifies his hold over the b3 square. But Magnus just going in h4. He's looking for a fight, and he is a train that is not going to be stopped in this game. He says, you know what? I've got the center, I've got the space, I've got the development coming in, I've got the bishops coming in over here if you castle that way, and I've got the h-pawn rolling. So the moment you castle over here, this pawn is just a couple moves away. Also, there's a hidden idea of this h-pawn push, which is delaying castling so that you might be able to move the rook up and conduct a rook lift to attack the king this way. And we'll see that. Let's see. We get queen a5 from Jan. Okay. Putting a little pressure here, pinning the pawn, so maybe some opening of the center could be good for black, but Magnus just keeping it controlled, bishop d2, developing, and also taking a look at the queen. So the queen drops back to b6, now hitting the b2 pawn. And although this is an ugly move, you got to play it. Rook b1. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, you've still got a lot of benefits in the position. Now, it is technically equal according to the computer if black plays correctly, like bishop here, bishop e3, solidifying the center. And now here the computer wanted black to play queen a5, bishop d2, queen b6, queen e3, and shake hands and go home. It's a draw. But that's not going to happen, guys. That's not going to happen. Instead, Jan already plays an inaccuracy here and castles. And look at the eval bar shooting up to +1 pretty much just by castling. Why? Well, the black king is not safe over there. In fact, with the center being closed like this and black having the opportunity to control when it opens, aside from, this being a thing possibly, the king is actually safer in the center right now than castling. Because look at the h-pawn. Look at the bishops coming in. And also, after you castle, knight f4 becomes very strong. Knight f4 is very strong. Because the pieces are just rolling in, and you've got knight h5 coming in combo with the rook lift. It's going to be pretty nasty here. So Jan playing queen b3, hoping for a queen trade, but Magnus says no thank you. He slides his queen over to c1, and now here we have cd4. This is fine. Trading a little bit, trying to ease the pressure on the position. But here, Jan makes a very, very poor decision. Now, notice this is a rapid time format. I didn't mention that. This is 10 minutes with like 2-second bonus, I believe, for each side. Now, Jan already down 3 minutes on the clock and in a worse position against the top player in the world. Now, here he has to play something like rook e8, knight f8, and just try to survive, right? Just acknowledge that the white attack is strong and go into defensive mode. But instead of defending, Jan decides to counterattack. And he says, I'm going in. I'm going in because that was my whole idea, right? I pushed my pawn to a4, so I'm going to get into the b3 square, and I'm going to create some havoc, get my knight into c3, and maybe create something over here. But there's no king right here. There's a king in the center, but he can get out of there whenever he wants. Meanwhile, white has 1, 2, 3, we'll count this as 4, the queen, 5 in a moment with this bishop, and 6 pieces and a pawn attacking a king. So this little knight journey to the edge of the board ends up being a bit of a waste of time and resources because white just plays bishop d3 and h6. It's just inaccuracy after inaccuracy from black. Now here, instead of h6, maybe knight c4 right away. It's still not great because you get knight g5, and maybe this is what Jan was afraid of. Then if you play h6 here, then, it's not knight takes e6, but maybe there was something there he was afraid of. I don't know. But this is just, it looks scary, and it is. White is much, much better. But he plays h6 right away. But that just creates a target here to open up the king. If this knight ever moves, say to, I don't know, h5, in a moment here, h5, then this bishop opening up to the h6 pawn becomes very strong. Now, there was this very fun opportunity Magnus had after bishop d3 and h6. Instead of bishop d3, he could have played rook h3 right away and realized that this is actually really, really strong right away. Now, let's just take a look at what could have happened here. Maybe f6 and rook f7 to defend the black king here on g7, but let's say we just get all the pieces rolling in. We get a knight taking f6, and look at this, king f1. You know why? You know why king f1 in this position? Because e5 is coming. So if you play something else, let's just say a random move, and let's say e5, you can't take that with your queen because you lose the queen. You're pinned to your king. So that's why the computer says to move the king out of the way so that you can take on e5 when it gets played. And then you just keep rolling in. The pawn marches forward to h5. And, the attack could end by just trading down into a winning endgame like this. where you just have rook against knight and you're just going to mop up. That could have happened. But instead, Magnus plays bishop d3, obviously a good move, getting another attacking piece into the game. Now, we have this h6 move, and now rook h3, still very, very strong from Magnus. He's winding up, and we get knight c4. Now, again, this is just not what is needed. You're trying to attack with a queen and a knight, but where are the rest of your pieces? They're all over here. This light squared bishop hasn't moved. It's the French bishop. Oh, man. Jan is just getting a bad case of the French bishop in this game. Oh, man. Now, if you don't know, French bishop, because of the French structure with this pawn, the light squared pawn chain here, the light squared bishop struggles to get into the game. And that's what's happening here. And the knight is not doing a whole lot. The rook, this rook, it's just nothing's happening over here. But again, like I said, White has a lot of pieces joining the attack, and it's very, very scary. So Magnus drops his bishop back, kicking the queen out of the position, saying, "Get out of my face, pretty please." And then he plays this knight h5, eyeing up that g7 pawn, eyeing it up here. So here was kind of Black's last chance to try and hold it together. The position is already falling apart. Well, internally, maybe not visibly to there's not a bunch of trades happening at the moment and the position's not literally falling apart, but there's a lot of pressure and it's about to break, right? Now, Jan could have played b6 here to open up this light squared bishop and try and get it into the game. Right? Like imagine a dream scenario where this is obviously not going to happen, but let's say that White blunders checkmate, right? Like that's a possibility. Maybe not if you're playing against Magnus, but hey, you might as well try, right? If there's hope, then there's hope. But instead, let's say here we get bishop takes h6. Yeah. And you can't take that. You cannot take, because then you get mated. It's literally forced mate here. And if you don't take it, well, then you just accept the fact that you've lost a pawn and you try to go for this bishop a6. And we could get something like this where a lot of pieces get traded. And although the black king is very open, at least black has hopes of counterplay and, is not immediately dying. But instead, the black king kind of immediately dies, Macbeth style. At least we're not in a theater that's not cursed. I'm in a studio, my home studio. If you don't know, it's like a theater thing where if you say Macbeth in the theater, the show is cursed and bad stuff will happen. But hey, we're not in a theater, so I'm all good. Now, instead of that, Jan plays knight takes e3. And it's game over within a few moves here. Why? Why? I don't see why. Well, when you're Magnus, all you need is the pieces on the right squares pointing at the king. And it also helps that black is, not participating with any of these pieces. That's what, 5 plus 9 is 14. That's 17. That's 20 points of material. I would say the bishop is kind of helping to defend, maybe the knight as well. So let's say like 17 pieces of material not participating in the game. Yeah, and that's also why if you're attacking, say on the king side, you want to keep the center closed because it makes it more difficult for the pieces to get over there to help defend. The black pieces went on a little journey that just didn't work. They missed the bus, right? And now they're stuck on the island. Missed the boat, and now they're stuck on the island. Unless you want to drive a bus on the island, or off of the island, you could try that. It might not work very well. You might have to swim after a little bit, but you could try it. Anyway, why is queen takes e3 here so strong? Well, f5 trying to hold it together, but just rook g3, and yeah, it's getting pretty rough out here. Rook f7 and queen takes h6. Yeah, you play bishop f8 here, but just queen g3. And black resigns. Black just resigns. You know why? Because let's say bishop e7. Yeah, knight g7. And the knight is about to move away with devastating effect. Let's say the king tries to run. You can give this check here. The computer has a sense of humor and says repeat moves once. And then, you could just win the queen like this, and it's obviously winning. Now, let's say instead of that, maybe queen a5 check, trying to get something over here. But you're going to run out of checks pretty soon if you just go that route. And if you try to go back with your queen to defend, then the whole real point of this is knight g5. Yeah. Knight g5, and you're threatening two nasty threats here, and then it's just game over. I mean, there's nothing you can do here. The computer says sack your queen to avoid mate, but if you play anything else, yeah, it's just mate. And if you try to I don't know, play this, then you still get mated. So it's game over. Jan resigns, and Magnus takes yet another tournament win. $200,000 in one tournament. Isn't that wild? Oh, man. He really is the strongest player in the world and makes the rest of us look like chumps. But we didn't even need him for that. I think we make ourselves look like chumps very well on our own. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you. As always, make sure you like and subscribe. Would appreciate that. Trying to grow the channel here. I'm sharing daily puzzles every day. The daily puzzles on chess.com. So if you're interested, subscribe for those. And then, whenever you swipe through anything, you can see the daily puzzle on there without having to go into the app yourself and try to solve it. You can just watch me break it down for you. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.